Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the GreenZone Podcast for our ninth episode of our second season here on this spooky Halloween Thursday at 11:45 in the morning. I'm Cameron Green, happy with you here, the host of the Green Zone Podcast. Like I say, episode 9 today. Today, I kind of want to sit down and talk about our World Series predictions that we had, the discussion about that, and we'll have some of that going on. Let's probably talk about next year's campaign for those interested in that. We got our weekly NFL picks are going on too this week, so a lot going on here. But I do want to start off in Major League Baseball. Last night, where the Los Angeles Dodgers captured their eighth World Series title in franchise history, um, and they win it in 5 games over a Yankee team that didn't really even feel like they showed up. It's kind of hard to say, but really did feel like the Yankees shot themselves in the foot. The Dodgers were way more doing the little things, making sure that uh, they were doing everything they can to pounce on the Yankees' mistakes that were happening quite often. When you think about it in the grand scheme of things, Aaron Judge had a good game last night, and it kind of made it feel like New York was going to be on its way to going to LA for Game 6. But that fifth inning happens. You give up 5 runs. None of them earned to Garrett Cole. But, last night, it's unfortunate to say, but the Los Angeles Dodgers were the better team. And in many ways, too, you look at it, they were the best team in baseball this whole season from beginning to end. And this is a squad, too, that's going to be way better last year than they were even this year because you want to talk about starting rotation problems that were probably in favor of the Yankees entering this World Series. Well, you're going to add Tyler Glass now to that rotation. You're going to try and add Clayton Kershaw back whenever you can to go along with Walker Buehler, to go along with, guys. You're going to have Otani back next year to pitch. So this Dodger team is probably going to be here to stay for a long time. And for both squads, I mentioned last week when I was talking about this prediction I thought the Yankees were going to win in 7, but that both teams were playing for what could be potentially a dynasty in the future, whereas the Dodgers can kind of start to reign supreme on their on the other teams in the National League. And the Yankees, I feel like more so playing for right now, playing to keep Juan Soto for the future, but also at the same time looking to try and expand their horizons in terms of free agency market and maybe try to regather and use that World Series championship as a recruiting tool to bring people in. Um, and that's just did not what happened in all 5 games. You think about it, they won Game 4 that the Dodgers, not that I said they weren't trying to win, but obviously were okay with having a game that, the Yankees just got the better of them. Anthony Volpe with the grand slam. But there, you look at the overall 2024 World Series, I think the overall aspect of it is that it was a mistake filled, year series for the Yankees. Like it never really felt like they really showed up to play, that they reached their full potential, of at least what they showed in the regular season, um, for that World Series. And now you could argue maybe that if you look at it now, because the Yankees weren't even on the Dodgers level, that maybe the 4 best teams in baseball this season all came out of the National League, with the Mets, the Dodgers, the Padres, you could say the Phillies, the Braves, that those teams are just far and away better than the American League teams were this year. I think if you look at the final 4 um, in the National League, way better, I think, than the final 4 in the American League with Detroit, Kansas City, Cleveland, and New York. Like that really didn't feel like that was that hard of a team to get through. And maybe that's the case for the Yankees. They kind of fell flat come the World Series or just were gassed. It's a lot of baseball to play. And just a pitching staff that didn't really execute the way they really wanted to. Defensively, it wasn't at all what they wanted to do. Base running as well. There's just too many mistakes the Yankees left on the field. And so many plays that the Dodgers just happened to capitalize on for that. So I mean, the Dodgers, hats off to you. I said the Yankees would win in 7 games. Dodgers win in 5. Not really surprised by that in a sense too, of where I thought that both teams had a chance to do this. If the Yankees would have won in 5, I probably would have said the same thing about, yeah, this Yankees team is for real. But I think this Dodgers team's for real too. And like you look at Shohei Ohtani in one season, removed from LA, Anaheim, I should say, but you have a 50-50 season, almost for sure going to be unanimous MVP. You're going to be a Silver Slugger. The first ever DH to probably win the MVP, and you're going to cap it off with a World Series championship. And he's under contract for, another decade. Like it's gonna be fun if you're a Dodger fan or if you're just even an LA fan. You're in that city. It's gonna be a fun 5 or 6 years here. You would like to think, especially if Otani gets back to what he was doing, going both ways. And then Juan Soto at the end of the day. I mentioned last week in this podcast that I thought that Juan Soto had the most to play for because he had the most leverage he needed for free agency. Now, I looked on today and it averaged that um, the contract that's they're talking about for Juan Soto around the time for 13 years, $476 million. It's about 36 million a year. Um, that to me doesn't surprise me. It doesn't really surprise me to think that that would not be a number that Juan Soto couldn't reach, couldn't achieve. He said in the post game, they had him in the locker room. They asked him, they said, what teams are um, up for bidding with you or what's next for you? Because someone asked him about a question about the New York Mets, and he said, all 30 teams are open for me. Now let's be real with ourselves here. No, that's not the case. You look at the teams that are probably the bottom feeders of the league: Tampa, Oakland, Cincinnati, Cleveland. Toronto is probably not a good spot for Soto. The Angels, like these squads aren't really in the mix for him, but there are some teams that I think that could be in form. I said last week it was really down to four teams, and that was Boston, both New York's, and LA, the Dodgers. That's really what I had for my four teams that I could do that there. But I think I want to look back now. There are some underdog teams I kind of wanted to address and things that might be a good fit for him. I want to start off with the Seattle Mariners. Now, the Mariners absolutely underachieved this year. You fired Scott Service towards the end of the season. Julio Rodriguez didn't have the best year. With a pitching staff that has George Kirby, Luis Castillo, Logan Gilbert, Bobby Miller, like that's a squad that should win high 80s to 90 games a year and should be in that contention for the AL West. And especially this year when you knew LA and Oakland weren't going to do anything and Texas didn't do anything either, really not much this year to defend their title. I mean, Houston had that division locked up for about the last month and a half that Seattle could have challenged if they had some decent, you know, guys making a little more appearances in that sense. But for Juan Soto, I mean, it was really that um, I think he would fit in well in that lineup. I think it's kind of odd because, where do you go when you have Julio Rodriguez tied up for a lot of money for a lot of years, and would Juan Soto command a 13-year contract worth almost it'd be the second richest contract in baseball history behind Otani, to a team that's not historically a big spender. I know they got Robbie Cano about a decade ago, and that was big money for that time, but really, does it work? I don't know, but it's like a dark horse team that I think could kind of find itself in there, in that mix, and maybe felt they were one or two players away, from being a big hitter away, because I never thought even that San Diego would go after Juan Soto. So that one to me, Seattle feels like an interesting spot for him. Possibly one that could work out. We don't really know, but something that might be able to say. Next one is kind of interesting. I got the Baltimore Orioles. Now Baltimore, I think, would have to move on from some of the younger players to do this, and I don't know if they'd really want to affect that core. But Baltimore right now, right there with winning a division year in and year out. You got solid starting pitching, you got a good young core. Maybe some of those guys you could move on and trade for other players right now to help you win right now. Like a guy like Heston Kjerstad or Colton Cowser. I think you keep the core of Adley Rutschman, Gunnar Henderson. You probably try to keep Jackson Holiday around for now just to see what you think about it. But Soto could be a guy there that you would think that, um, if they want to man another guy in left field or DH, that he'd be a pretty good fit for that. But at the same time, I think if you're going to play in the AL East, why would you want to go play for the Orioles when your Yankees just went to the World Series? Now, so that was a dark horse. I'm not really sure about that, how that lines up. That's just a thought for a team that might be able to feel that they're a player away that could blow them away with an offer that you couldn't refuse. But I think Seattle and Baltimore could be a couple of spots that might be interesting. I think another team that's in that mix that's a little odd. I don't know if why he would go there, but it's different, but would be the Giants. Mainly because that if he signed with the San Francisco Giants, he would be the face of that franchise. If he signs back with the Yankees, which I'm predicting right now, I think Juan Soto will re-sign with the Yankees, probably do an 8 or 9 year deal. That's if the Yankees want to do that team friendly deal, but maybe even could be that 13-year deal. He's 25 years old. Lock yourself up for the rest of your career. Um, the Giants give him the availability to be the best signing for them since Barry Bonds, acquisition signing since Bonds. And it allows him to be the face of the franchise to go to California to be in a city that could rival the Giant or the Dodgers, I'm saying. Um, if there is a dark horse team that's in that mix that is not the Yankees or Mets, the Dodgers or the Red Sox, the Giants to me sound like a very appealing place to play. Playing in a great stadium, in a great city, history of winning championships. I mean, to go along with just the fact that you are the face of the franchise, like it's your team, it's your franchise to play around with, and that could be somewhere. I think if there's a dark horse that could happen, San Francisco Giants should be in the mix for Juan Soto. Now, like we step beyond Soto, like looking at next season, how many teams really feel that they have a chance coming into that next season? Looking at some of the teams right away, um, I think the Dodgers right now are probably the favorites to win next year once again, and to their credit, they probably should be. The American League, though, I think it's a lot different. I think the Yankees, technically, I always say that they're the favorite because they have um, some guys like that, come around. But there's some teams in the American League that need to up their game that could be in the mix there too. Because if I think of Kansas City has another really solid offseason of acquiring some guys that help can win right now, like when you have Bobby Witt Jr. locked up for another 12 years, why not try and win now? Like you're gonna have him for a long time, might not as well win. If Kansas City can do a really nice job of locking up some guys, I talked about Seattle. Seattle could be a dark horse for that American League. But at the same time, it also feels like the National League is just right now the superior league. Because if Atlanta doesn't lose Ronald Acuna Jr. and Spencer Strider this year, early in the year, I think Atlanta probably has the best record in baseball. And Atlanta through the whole year was like a living hell of injuries, of you lose Ozzy Albies for 6 weeks, you Acuna for the season, Strider for the season. Austin Riley had a down year to begin with, and then talk about the fact that he was hurt at the end. Like it's just not what you want at all. Matt Olson had a down year as well compared to last year. Um, it's tough for them, I think, when you look at it because that's a team that feels that they're in it year in and year out. And I predicted this last March. I thought the Braves and the Orioles were the two best teams in baseball, had the best rosters in baseball. And, that was why they were in my World Series prediction. That's just kind of the way that one rolled out for me. Um, Now, did I think the Dodgers were that far behind? No. But at the same time, I thought the Braves were the better team. Now, the Dodgers, if they're able to get some more guys or maybe feel the better team than last year, I would feel differently about them as well. Um, but right now, I think Atlanta's still probably that number two team in the National League. But like San Diego, it's a good team. Philadelphia, it's a good team. I had thought the Phillies were going to win the World Series this year. And you look at postseason play. I thought the Phillies were the best team on paper and that they were going to cruise to a World Series and cruise past some of these teams, and that just didn't happen. The Mets are a team that I think need to be a little aggressive in the offseason if they want to have a chance to come back and do what they did this year. It starts with re-signing Pete Alonso, but it also I think helps when you need to get some free agent depth. I mean, Luis Severino's on a 1 year deal. If you can bring him back, that'd be awesome, but you need some starting pitching help. Some of that middle infield could be used as an upgrade. A guy like Alex Bregman could be a perfect mix for what the Mets are trying to do at third base. Sign him to a 4 or 5 year deal, get some there. Like there's deals to be made. I think the Mets need to be aggressive and can do. They just need to be the right moves for them. But like we'll see what happens with the 2025 campaign. The Dodgers, of course, are probably on the top when you look at that. But yeah, like it's a different beast now. We enter the free agency mode here in just about a month or so, I think. And that's my favorite time of the year, baseball season. It's weird that my favorite time of the year is when baseball's not happening. But I love the off season, maybe just because it feels like your team is kind of in it, until it actually starts playing out and they're not doing well. Can't get let down in free agency, um, unless your team is cheap. It's like the Twins were last year. I'm not trying to homer it away, but they just were not aggressive last year. Um, there's a lot of teams that could be really aggressive. There's a lot of teams that could be just sitting back and seeing where they go and falter. But it'll be fun. I'll start doing more videos, I think, on the free agency upcoming. Like I said, it's my favorite time of the year, so I'm trying to break down different signings, how I think they work out. But no, I'm really excited for what next year has to have. And congratulations to the Dodgers for being World Series champions. A great year. I want to see it for them and for baseball and just in general. I'm going to break it off here now into our weekly NFL segment picks. It's kind of a slower week, I think, in sports. This week, I'm not doing my NBA power rankings. This week will be on next week's episode. But we're just going to kind of keep it slim, keep it slender today for a Halloween episode. So we're going to jump right into what I think is going to be the picks for this weekend. Thursday night game on Halloween. Like I say, it's a spooky game. Houston Texans against the New York Jets are half a point underdogs of the Texans coming into this game. I think people feel that the Jets need to win desperately and that there's no other choice for them but to do this right now. But to me, I think Houston's one of the best teams in the AFC, probably the best team that's not named Kansas City Chiefs. Therefore, I'm going to take the Texans in the spread. I'll take them in the straight up for this week's game, for Thursday's game, actually. The 2.5 half point underdog, the Dallas Cowboys, will be taking on a 2.5 point favorite in the Atlanta Falcons. Cowboys are 3-4 and have been trending downwards lately, and the Falcons have been going upwards at 5-3, trying to be ahead of that NFC South division. Um, I think normally I would pick on a team that needs to be a little more desperate than they are, but I do think that Dallas could match up well against Atlanta if they get some of their guys back and get a game where they can go back to 500. But Kirk Cousins and the Falcons right now are playing really well together. They're gelling well. They're playing super solid football. That's why I'm going to take the Falcons in the straight up, and I'm going to take them in the spread at 2.5 point favorites to win on Sunday. Miami Dolphins taking on the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are 6-2. Dolphins are 2-5, and the Bills are 6.5 point favorites. It's in Buffalo this weekend. Um, the Dolphins looked a lot more like themselves this week with Tua Tagovailoa actually, playing and being around. But the Bills right now are looking like they're really a solid team. Amari Cooper and Josh Allen haven't really clicked quite yet, but James Cook's been carrying the load. Yeah, Keon Coleman, like there's some weapons there on Buffalo. Um, but I think this is a game that Miami needs to have to stay alive in the wild card spot. Right now, you can kind of forget the division. But if Tua's going to play like himself, if you can get Tyreek Hill in the game more fluently, if you can get Raheem Mostert in the game more, Jalen Waddle can be more effective. I think Tua being back will click more this week than it did last week. So I'll take the Bills in the straight up game, but I will take the Dolphins to cover the 6.5 point spread in Buffalo. The Las Vegas Raiders at 2-6 are taking on this 3-5 and 7.5 point favorite Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals lost last weekend to the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, the Bengals right now are kind of in survival mode in a sense because if both Pittsburgh and both Baltimore are going to try and win the division, they're both, I think, at 6 wins right now. You have to win one game at a time, and I think this is a perfect game to get back your mojo, especially if you're Joe Burrow, to try and find T. Higgins a bit more, Jamar Chase, get something going, a little camaraderie. I'm going to take the Bengals in this straight up, and I'm also going to take them in the spread at 7.5 points. I know it's a big spread, but I believe in the Bengals this week. They're going to head off in a good spot here at home in Cincinnati. The LA Chargers are 1.5 point favorites in Cleveland this weekend. Chargers are 4-3, and the Browns are 2-6. Of course, the Browns beat the Baltimore Ravens last week, and what was a great game for them that they kind of need to get back on track. Um, it's weird enough because the Chargers are barely 500. They're playing okay football. They're surviving. The defense is really their main identity here. The offense is not really existent for the time being. Um, and if you're Cleveland, you're just riding the wave of Jameis Winston. Excuse me. You're riding the wave of Jameis Winston, and you're just trying to keep things going the way they are. Um, at 1.5 point underdogs, I think I'm going to ride the Jameis wave myself. I'm going to take the Browns in the straight up, but I'm going to take them on the spread this weekend to beat the Chargers. New England Patriots taking on the Tennessee Titans. I mean, I don't think it matters if the Titans are playing Will Levis or Mason Rudolph. Rudolph looks like the better option right now at quarterback. And it looks like it's Jacoby Brissett for the Patriots. They were able to beat the Jets last weekend. Patriots need to find their mojo a little bit just to get some more team morale building and move themselves a little bit farther to where they want to be. I'm going to take the Patriots in the straight up, and I'm going to take them in the spread. They're only 2.5 point underdogs. I think they're a better team than Tennessee overall, anyways. So I'll take New England that 2.5 point spread over the Titans. Next, we got on our agenda, we got the Washington Commanders taking on the New York Giants. The Commanders, of course, winning last weekend on the Hale Daniels. They're 2.5 point favorites for this weekend. The Giants 2.5 point underdogs. It's in the Meadowlands at MetLife Stadium. To me, Washington's defense is a lot more aggressive than they were last year. The offense, if Jaden Daniels had proved last week, even if he's hurt, he's still going to be out there battling. Washington right now is in a favorable spot. I think I'm going to take them here at this 2.5 point spread. Favorite over the Giants. I'll take the Commanders in the straight up, and I'll take them in the spread as well. Arguably the toughest game of the week, and it's funny because it's not good teams in this one, but it's the New Orleans Saints taking on the Carolina Panthers. The Saints are 2-6, Panthers 1-7. Um, because this is a home game for Carolina, I kind of want to lean that way, especially if Spencer Rattler's going to play. But if it's not, if it's Derek Carr, I think I'm leaning in Derek Carr's direction. So I'm kind of torn both ways. I'm going to take the Carolina Panthers in the spread, but I'm going to take the New Orleans Saints in the straight up. I think if this is going to be a game, the kind of the toilet bowl, I think this is going to be a game that's just kind of a crap show through and through to the end. Maybe a win on a field goal, low scoring game. But Saints will win, moving 3-6. But Carolina's going to cover this spread I have this weekend. Another noon game on our agenda here. The Denver Broncos, who are 5-3, are going to go into Baltimore. They're also 5-3. Ravens are 9.5 point favorites at home, where the Denver Broncos are 9.5 point underdogs on the road. I think that Denver has played far beyond what they're actually capable of, what I thought about coming to the season. But as for Baltimore, offensively kind of took a step back last week against Cleveland. Maybe feeling that they're a little more under pressure this week. It might tend to make them play a little bit harder than usual. But from my experience watching a Sean Payton-led defense, it can only lead to more problems. So therefore, I'm going to take the Broncos in the spread at 9.5 point favorites, but I still will take Baltimore in the straight up. Now we're on to 3 o'clock games. The first one on our agenda is the Bears and the Cardinals. The Bears are 4-3, of course, losing last week on that last second Hail Mary to the Commanders. And the Cardinals at 4-4 at 1.5 point favorites at home. Now, this is a game you would like to say you would think that Arizona would not have any business winning in this one, but I think Caleb Williams looked pretty disappointing last week against Jaden Daniels. It looked like Daniels was the much more superior player. I'm going to take the Cardinals in this one in the straight up, and I'm also going to take the Cardinals in the spread. Get them over 500, maybe compete them in the NFC West because the way the Niners are playing and some of these other teams are playing, that West might be wide open for some of these teams. I think the Cardinals are no exception to that. They're going to try and take this one in Arizona. Next game on our agenda here is the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are 7.5 point favorites over the Jaguars. And playing in a tough situation like Jacksonville is, where you're not really going anywhere, trending anywhere differently. And if you're the Eagles, you're 5-2. You want to keep pouncing on that right now. I think the Eagles will take this one at home. It's gonna be a tough place to play for Jacksonville. Philly's gonna take this one in the spread. Also gonna take them in the straight up. Now the Fox game of the week is the Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers. I think this is probably the hardest game of the week to play. Um, Detroit right now looking like the best team in the NFC. I want to say it, be on the mark on the record right there. Detroit's the best team in the NFC. Green Bay right now at 6-2, not too far behind them, but I don't feel like they're on par with the Lions are doing. Therefore, I'm gonna take the Lions in the straight up. I'm gonna take them in the spread. That'll be that pick right now for the toughest game of the week. I'm probably gonna say. And the last 325 game is the LA Rams looking at the Seattle Seahawks. The Rams proved last week that when they have their guys, when they have their dudes, they're one of the best teams in football. As shown week one against the Lions, that they are a very competent team that can very much hang in there with any team that they really please or want to. And Seattle right now is kind of a dwindling team. They play well one week, they don't play well the next week. They've been kind of on the rocks ever since going 3-0. They're 1-4 in their last 5 games. I think LA will get back to 500 in this one. Seattle's going to fall below 500. I'm going to take the Rams in the straight up and to cover that half-point spread. 2 games left on our agenda here. We got the Sunday night football game between the Colts and the Vikings. Vikings are 5.5-point favorites at home, and it's not going to be Anthony Richardson starting for the Colts this week or for the foreseeable future. Him being benched and Joe Flacco going to be handed the realm. They're at quarterback. I think the Vikings have a strong defense and to play at home. It's a tough place to play at US Bank Stadium. I think Darnold's going to have a really good week this week. I think Aaron Jones will have a good bounce back week. Um, they only lost 2 games in 5 days. Now we got a whole week to reset, refresh, show what a good football team you are on a national stage. I'm going to take the Vikings in this one at 5.5-point favorites in the straight up and in the spread. And our final game of this week is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. That one being in Arrowhead, of course. I had my doubts last week about Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers because they were lacking Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, but the Buccaneers still show that they're a strong team, hung in there with Atlanta until the end. And Kansas City is no exception. A good defense, a solid offense. They have weapons all around. But I think Baker Mayfield's actually for real this year. It's not a fluke that he just doesn't have his weapons around. Baker's one of the best quarterbacks in football this year. I think that's the case here. Proving that they can hang with any other team in the division, in the league, whatever you want to call it. So at 8.5-point favorites, I'm going to take the Buccaneers in the spread, but I will take Kansas City in the straight up for this week. So that's all I got for you today, guys. A little bit of a shorter week, just some baseball and football discussion here. NBA power rankings will be back next week from episode 9 here in the GreenZone Podcast. Cameron Green, thank you for tuning in here on this spooky Halloween. I'll see you guys next week.